Hey, what's up everyone? In today's video, we're going to be going over RxSwift filtering operators. I've gone ahead and set up an iOS app to better demonstrate these operators. It has a published subject of type string, and we subscribe to the subject and emit the onNext events, the onError, onCompleted, and onDisposed events. And for each of these buttons, when you click on onNext, we send to the subject whatever's in the text field. For the completed button, we send onCompleted to the subject. For the error button, we send onError. And for the reset button, that one's used to reinitialize the published subject, and the reason that's necessary is because when you click on completed or on error, the published subject's life cycle terminates. We're going to first go over debounce. Only emit an item from an observable if a particular time span has passed without it emitting another item. You'll notice there's no parameter, but really there should be a parameter, so let's just say debounce of 2 seconds. And so here, when the observable emits a 1, after 2 seconds, that item is passed to the new observable. But later, when the first observable emits a 2, since the 3 is emitted within 2 seconds, the 2 is not emitted to the new observable. Same with the 3, same with the 4, and then it's only until the 5, because it has no subsequent value after 2 seconds, that it's emitted by the new observable. So let's see that one in action. For the due time, that's basically how long we want to buffer in between items. So we can specify seconds 2, and we'll just use the main scheduler. So when we run our app, if we insert value 1 and click on next, you'll see after 2 seconds that value is finally emitted by the new observable, and we see it in the console. Now if we keep clicking on next, which I'm doing so, we're never going to get an on next value, and that the reason being that 2 seconds have not passed, but as soon as we stop clicking on next, after 2 seconds, we get that value in the console. Okay, next one we're going to go over is distinct. So we suppress duplicate items emitted by an observable. RxSwift actually only has distinctUntilChanged, pretty similar, but so in this marble diagram, a 1 is emitted, and that's sent to the new observable. A 2 is emitted, and that's sent to the new observable. And then another 2 is emitted, but because we've already seen that value, that is not emitted to the new observable. Same with this one. But with distinctUntilChanged, we only compare the latest value with the previous value. And so when this 1 is emitted, we compare it to 2, and since those 2 are distinct values, they're not the same, that 1 would be emitted with distinctUntilChanged. So let's come back to our app and try that operator out. So let's emit a 1, and then let's emit a 2. And I'm clicking on next again, but the 2 is not being emitted in the console. But as soon as we emit a 1, that will be emitted. Even though we've already seen that value, the 1 is not equivalent to the most recent value of the 2, and so that 1 is passed to the new observable. Next, let's go over elementAt. Emit only an item n emitted by an observable. So this 2 actually specifies the item at index 2, where the items are indexed starting at 0. So this 1 and 2 are emitted at index 0 and 1 respectively, and it's not until item 3 at index 2 that that item is passed through, and a termination event is immediately sent as well. So let's add elementAt, and let's just copy the example using index 2. Let's use the similar values. So on next 1, that's not emitted in the console. Item 2 is not emitted in the console. Finally, item 3, which is at index 2, is emitted in the console, and you'll see that the observable immediately completes and the subscription is disposed of. Next, let's go over filter, where we emit only those items from an observable that pass a predicate test. And that predicate test here is that the item is greater than 10. And so the original observable, 2, of course, is not greater than 10, and so that value is not passed to the new observable, whereas 30 is, 22 is, 5 is not, etc. So you'll see that in our case, our published subject is a string, so the value that we check is actually a string, and we'll name it text. And let's just filter by the number of characters in the string. Let's only allow strings of greater than 1. Okay, so when we come to the text field and type in first and click on next, we do get that value. Same thing if we enter even just fi, which has 2 characters. We get the value in the console. But then when we try to emit a string of count 1, it does not go through. And that's because of this predicate we set at line 64. Next, we're going to go over skip, which is suppress the first n items emitted by an observable, and then emit all subsequent items. So in this case, skip 2 items. The 1 and 2 are skipped. They're not emitted to the new observable, but subsequent items 3 and 4 and so on are. Again, we're just going to follow the marble diagram and use skip 2. And so the first item 1 will be skipped. The second item 2 will be skipped. But then subsequent items 3, 4, etc. will all be emitted. Next, we're going to do take, which emits only the first n items emitted by an observable. And so it's like the opposite of skip. In this case, take 2 items. So the 1 and 2 are the only items emitted by the new observable, and we immediately terminate the new observable after we get the specified number of items. So let's just change the skip to a take. Let's insert value 1, which gets emitted. And when we insert value 2 is emitted, and the observable is immediately completed, and the subscription is disposed of. Finally, we're going to look at takeLast, which is emit only the final n items emitted by an observable. So in this case, takeLast of 1. So when we finally get a termination event in the original observable, it sees that the last item emitted was a 4 and sends that to the new observable along with the termination event. If the takeLast was 2, then the 3 and 4 would be sent, and so on. So let's change this to takeLast and change the parameter, the count, to 1, and run the app again. So no matter how many items we send, none will be passed on to the new observable and outputted in the console until we press on completed, which then takes the most recent value, which is the 5, and then immediately completes and disposes. Okay, that's all the RxSwift filtering operators we're going to go through in this video. There's a ton more, but if you learned something from this video, please like and subscribe. Leave a comment below if you have any thoughts, and we'll see you in the next video. Thank you.